Good morning, children. Today we will do from the diary of Anne Frank. Now, before starting with this chapter, we know that Anne Frank was a small girl who wrote in her diary. You all might are aware about this small little girl of 12-13 years who wrote her diary, and which was a vivid chronicle of the Second World War. Now you all know the story, and I hope that you will read it from the book, and you will read the book. I want to refer you the book, The Diary of a Young Girl, written by Anne Frank. You will definitely read this book, not only for this chapter, but to know about the society, about the effect of the Second World War on a small girl of 12-13 years. So it's a very interesting diary that you will enjoy to read, and you will know the history of that time. We will not enter much into her life. Rather, we will start with the chapter which is an excerpt from her diary. Basically, we know that Anne Frank was a small little girl who, along with our other family members, father Otto Frank, mother Edith Frank, and a sister, 16-year-old sister Margaret Frank, they all had to go into a secret annex, and because of the torture of the Jews, Hitler, Nazis, you all know, you have read in history, Holocaust, you have read. So you will refer this story to those incidents. So when she was in her secret annex, she wrote her diary, and this chapter is an excerpt from that diary. Let us very fast start with the chapter. Writing in a diary is a really strange experience for someone like me. Not only because I have never written anything before, but also because it seems to me that later on neither I nor anyone else will be interested in the musings of a 13-year-old schoolgirl. Is a really strange experience for someone, because to write a diary honestly is not very easy. To be honest with oneself is not so easy. So it is a strange experience to write a diary. And she says that not only because I have never written anything before, but also because it seems to me that later on no one will read, except me, no one will read the musings of a 13-year-old schoolgirl. That the thoughts, that the not so important thoughts that I'm entering or writing in my diary, I know that nobody will read later except myself. Oh well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me much, because I feel like writing as I have felt to write. So I will write, and I have an even greater need to get all kinds of things off my chest. I have to get rid of the things that are in my chest, that are in my mind, that the things that are going on, I want to get rid of. I want to ventilate. I want to, purgation of my mind is needed, that I will write in my diary. Paper has more patience than people. A very important line said by Anne Frank, and for all. This line particularly comes for explanation. Paper has more patience than people. Of course, because paper is one-way listener. He listens, paper listens only, does not challenge, does not retaliate. So there is no question of any quarrel or any altercation which might happen with friends, because your friend is not going to listen to you unquestionably, but paper does that. So paper has more patience than people. I thought of this saying on one of those days when I was feeling a little depressed and was sitting at home with my chin in my hands, bored and listless. She was going through a depression once, and she was thinking of writing or doing something at home. She was sitting at home with chin in my hands, bored and listless. Very much no energy, no interest, very much depressed she was feeling once. I finally stayed where I was brooding, but finally I remained in the same position, that is, in the process of brooding. Brooding means to think over something very deeply for a long time, continuously to think the same thing, that is brooding. And my condition remained the same. Yes, paper does have more patience, and since I am not planning to let anyone else read this stiff-backed notebook, grandly referred to as a diary, unless I should ever find a real friend, it probably won't make a bit of difference. So she finally found a solution, that she would write her feelings in this stiff backed notebook, that is, the back of which is very stiff, that is the diary. So she planned that she would write it in a diary, grandly referred to as diary, and unless I should ever find a real friend, and until and unless I get a real friend, I will not let it know to others what I am thinking. I will note it down here only. Now I am back to the point that prompted me to keep a diary in the first place. I don't have a friend. Now let me tell you why I found my solution to ventilate myself in diary only. Why? Because I don't have any friend. As I don't have any friend, so where shall I ventilate? I have to ventilate in the diary only. Let me put it more clearly. Let me tell you more clearly, since no one will believe that a 13-year-old girl is completely alone in the world. Who is going to believe me that a 13-year-old girl is alone, no friend, none? No one will believe. I'm loving, I have, and I am not. And if you say so, even I am also not like that. I am also not alone. I have loving parents, and a 16-year-old sister, Margaret Frank, as you know. And there are about 30 people I can call friends. There are 30 people around me whom I can call them as friends. So as I told you that I am friendless, it's absolutely not true. But there is a difference. What is that? I have a family, loving aunts, and a good home. Everything I have. No, on the surface I seem to have everything. But on the surface it seems that I have everything. But it is not true. Apparently it appears that I am having so many people around me, my family, my parents, my sister, my aunt, my other members, friends also. Apparently it seems that I have so many people around me. So still, how can I call myself as friendless? Thing is that on the surface I seem to have everything. These are all on the surface. That is, superficially I have many people. But except my one true friend. I have only one true friend, that is my diary. All I think about when I am with friends is having a good time. Yes, when I spend my time with my friends, it's a good time. I can't bring myself to talk about anything but ordinary everyday things. But when I talk with them, I talk with them only simple everyday things which are not very of serious important matter. Those are all very casual talks that I can have with my friends. We don't seem to be able to get any closer. We do not come closer to each other. My friends and I do not come very close to each other, and that's the problem. Maybe it's my fault that we don't confide in each other. Maybe that is a fault from my part, that I cannot open up, I cannot confide, I cannot open up myself with my inner emotions, very important secrets that I cannot share with my friends. That is my fault. Maybe it's my fault that we don't confide each other. In any case, that's just how things are, and unfortunately they are not liable to change. This is why I have started the diary, and I'm sure that will not change. I cannot change myself that suddenly I will start talking with my friends very closely. That I cannot do. So finally I have decided that diary is my only friend with whom I can talk and share. So diary is above all my friends. To enhance the image of this long-awaited friend in my imagination, I don't want to jot down the facts in this diary the way most people would do. As most people do, jot down the facts or the incidents that happens every day in life, that take place every day in my life, in their life. They just jot down their incidents in the diary. I do not want to do that. My purpose of writing diary is not like that. I want the diary to be my friend, and I am going to call this friend as Kitty. As you know, that she called her diary to be Kitty. And she said that she would not write it like that. She would write down the incidents as she feels and as it comes to her mind. Not exactly the point-wise noting of the incidents of day-to-day life. Since no one would understand a word of my stories to Kitty, if I were to plunge right in, I would better provide a brief sketch of my life, much as I dislike doing so. Though I don't like to describe my day-to-day life, but still let me explain so that means it can be understood by Kitty also. My father, the most adorable father I have ever seen. She was very fond of her father, Otto Frank. As you know, that when she died, then only among her family members and the group that was there in the annex, only Otto Frank survived. And he took up the responsibility to publish the diary of his daughter Anne Frank, and in English it came out, and later I think it's in English. If I might be wrong also, but finally it came out in many different languages. My father is the most adorable father I have ever seen. Did not marry my mother until he was 36. So my father had a late marriage of 36 and my mother was only 25. My sister Margaret was born in Frankfurt in Germany in 1926. I was born on 12th June 1929. I lived in Frankfurt until I was 4. My father emigrated to Holland in 1933. I hope these information need no explanation. You can well understand. My mother, Edith Hollander Frank, commonly known as Edith Frank, went with him to Holland in September, while Margaret and I were sent to Aachen to stay with our grandmother. She loved her grandmother also very much. Margaret went to Holland in December and I followed in February, when I was plunked down on the table as a birthday present for Margaret. As if I was a birthday present for Margaret. I was brought as a birthday present. I started right away at the Montessori Nursery School. I stayed there until I was 6, at which time I started in the first form. First form means standard 1. Then in the sixth form means when I was in standard 6. My teacher was Mrs. Cupurus, the headmistress. At the end of the year, we were both in tears as we said a heartbreaking farewell. But at the end of that year, I had to bid farewell to the school and to Mrs. Cupurus. In the summer of 1941, Grandma fell ill, had to have an operation. So my birthday passed with little celebration. 12th June passed in little celebration of the year 1941. Grandma died in January 1942. No one knows how often I think of her and still love her. She was in love, very much in love with grandmother. This birthday celebration in 1942 was intended to make up for the other, and Grandma's candle was lit along with the rest. The 4 of us are still doing well, and that brings me to the present day of 20th June 1942 and the solemn dedication of my diary. From that day, she started writing her diary. that is of which came out as Diary of Anne Frank.